And we are live, and it is Friday evening. Welcome to your favorite Friday evening habit of Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. Welcome. We are joined today by Geoff Thornton, security expert from the former the Rust Belt. He left the blue wall. He left the red state of Michigan and turned blue. Geoff, you're the reason the president lost Michigan.
One vote, yes.
Yes. And then we've got a friend of our show. He's been on our sister show, Direct Line, a couple times. Nate Sansom. Nate has a couple of big announcements that he might want to share with us a little bit later tonight. Nate comes from God's country, as I like to call it, the land of Smith Island cakes and Thrasher's French fries, Salisbury, Maryland. Welcome, Nate.
Thank you. And it's more than just Salisbury. It's the entirety of Wycomico County. And hey, but the whole Eastern Shore is God's country. But
it is.
Proud to be here.
It is. And I love Ocean City. And last but never the least, Don Irvine, chairman of Exton Academia. He can sniff out media biases 100 miles away. Don, welcome.
Thank you, Dwight. Always good to be back.
Yeah, I love doing the intros.
All right. Are we ready to roll, folks?
Yes, we are. We are ready to roll. I mean, this is an exciting news week.
Yeah, it was. And I promise you that this will not be as controversial potentially as last week with Jerry. So if you didn't watch last week's show, there's limits, but this is why we're
go to YouTube and watch it, because that drives up ratings, by the way, Don. Yeah, it's all about ratings, remember that episode where Geraldo Rivera had the Klan on his show? That was one of the highest rated shows of Geraldo, actually.
All right, so we're going to still talk about the election, because the election is kind of still going on. But can we say, at least with this group, for all intents and purposes, it's basically over? We had Georgia, certifying, the votes for Joe Biden. The president is still fighting till his last breath. In all the states, but most of the courts are turning him down, and they're rejecting the cases, his pleas about this. And I don't know how many people saw any part of yesterday's press conference with Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and Tim Ellis, but that was bonkers in my opinion. I mean, that was just, there's a point in time.
Before or after the hair tie was
we are supporters of President Trump, but we have to learn to draw a line somewhere and say, okay, sometimes we've crossed over here, and all the allegations and accusations that were made yesterday without any true evidence being brought forward, just kind of says, where are we going? Where are they going with it? Comments, thoughts.
Well, my view is I think we wait for every last vote. I mean, the president doesn't concede until the election is formally certified. So the president can go, we went 35 days for Bush v. Gore. Joe Biden can wait 35 days to start his transition office and so on. Trust me, the country's in much better shape today than it was when President Bush took over from Bill Clinton. So, sit tight, Joe, stay in your basement, watch cartoons,
And I have no argument with counting every vote. I mean, I think that is something that every American should at least endorse, is that every vote should be counted. But, part of the problem here, I think we're seeing, though, is just that, the legal maneuvers, by President Trump are not, his team seems to be throwing things up, to see what sticks, not necessarily based on any factual hard evidence that's going on. And so, it does, at least from an optics or PR standpoint kind of a thing, it doesn't help the cause, with all of this going on. I mean, I think, as much as I hate to say it, I think we're going to see, it's President-elect Biden, Joe Biden, and it's going to be President Biden on January 20th.
At 12:01.
Yeah, 12:01. I won't be with that inauguration.
How is this all playing on the shore?
That's a good question.
How is this stuff playing on the shore, Nate?
On the conservative part of Maryland.
The reddest of the red.
I'll actually say, we tend to be a conservative shore, although we don't take anything for granted. By registration, the Democrats actually outnumber us in my county, but I'm working to change that.
How is that possible?
but we consistently elect Republican leadership, though, so that's a testament to the work our committee does. But we're working on changing that registration number next. But as far as the outcome, I think it's, there certainly was a lot of grassroots support here, as you'd expect. I mean, and we saw about 34% in Maryland. I'm guessing a good portion of that came, throughout the shore counties. And of course, the little Southern Maryland also, and Hartford as well.
And
Western. I look at the way I look at the situation now. I'm very much a fiscal conservative, and so I'm looking at the money. And right now, seeing the number of dollars that the campaign is pouring into some of these lawsuits, I look at that and I see the great potential where those donor dollars could be going to other races. They could be going to Georgia. We have a really make it or break it race down in Georgia right now. I must get 10 text messages every day, asking for money. And I just must say, as a fiscal conservative, I'm a guy, it's all about risk and reward. And right now, we look at the situation and it's not what many people would want it to be, but yet the situation in Georgia is something that, it's going to be what we make it. And so right now, I think really from a campaign strategy standpoint, as a party, I think we need to be focusing our efforts on those 2 seats that are up for election in Georgia, because that is really where we can be making our mark. I think there comes a time where you need to see, what's going to benefit me most, what's going to benefit our party most. And right now, I think that's focusing on Georgia and securing that majority in the Senate for the next, 2 years to come.
And we have to win Georgia, as Chuck Schumer has said, we win Georgia, we change America. This is just the flavor of what we'll have, just the minimum. If we lose.
And that's an excellent point, Nate. I mean, in terms of what you just said there, and I think you'll find a lot of other Republicans probably will feel that way, though they probably are not going to be as courageous and then actually pronounce that and actually say something about it. But you're absolutely right about this. It's just that there's a tremendous amount of money being spent on these legal cases that really are not going to bear fruit. However, as you have said, we do have this big runoff in Georgia, 2 Republicans running, the Senate majority, teetering right there. That's the big key right there. And we all know that the Democrats are working very, very hard to get out the vote and do things. The runoffs would generally favor Republicans, but boy, if we take that for granted, we're going to lose. We have to work twice as hard as they do, in this case. We're going to have to make sure we get this out. And, we are seeing Perdue and Loeffler, uniting together, in this. And they're trying to make a point about what would happen, in the Senate, which is kind of an interesting thing to me, because as a Republican, as a conservative, I'm glad to see them working together on this and then trying to make a case for why they should be elected on the one hand. On the other hand, as Georgia seems to be seemingly shifting a little bit with the growth of the Democrats into Atlanta and some of these other areas, these urban areas, I also wonder, if this race will, with them saying that, will that get the kind of the Stacey Abrams kind of groups and all these things, more fired up about, okay, we've got the Senate, we can get the Senate if we can defeat these guys. Is that going to work against the Republicans? So will this be a tight race instead of something the Republicans should win by a few points?
I think in Georgia, I think Senator Perdue is running away with this. I think he's going to win his race. Loeffler, I'm almost certain, 95% certain she wins. But it's not going to be a runaway for her. It's going to be a close race, and it's very possible her opponent may not concede, like Stacey Abrams is yet to concede the governor's race in Georgia. She still has not congratulated Governor Kemp, who, by the way, let me just say, what is the matter with Governor Kemp and the Republican Secretary of State? You'd think things could have been done a little bit better. They could have done some, more checks and balances on this stuff, not to throw Governor Kemp under the bus. But.
That's true to an extent. I think, we've seen an election here where it's roughly 152 million votes now, I think, have been totaled up here for the president's race, right?
Yep.
Biden around 79 million, President Trump around 73 million, phenomenally large numbers. Were there going to be problems? If you have 152 million votes plus, there are going to be problems. Our systems are, they were not ready for this onslaught. I mean, this is great for the Democrats, because the Democrats, they played COVID perfectly to set up the mail-in ballot and this absentee ballot situation, which benefits them to a greater degree than the Republicans. But it overwhelmed all these votes overwhelmed, the systems in a lot of these states, and Georgia definitely wasn't really ready for this. I think the official, that was in charge of where those votes were, found, they were counted, during this recount process. I think that person was reprimanded and then fired because it wasn't the first offense. Those are things that have to happen. But we have a voting system in the United States where the states, the counties, they're in charge. It's not a federal control from top to bottom. So you go into Georgia. Why are we having a runoff? Because Georgia says you have to get 50.1% of the votes. Yeah. Not the plurality. It is you have to get the majority. Absolutely. So we have that. We don't see that generally elsewhere, right? Otherwise Purdue would have been in. We would have had one runoff.
Well, no, actually, if we just said whoever gets the most votes wins, even Loeffler would have won.
Well, she was trailing.
Was she trailing? I thought she was.
Yeah, she was second. Yeah, because she had to fight off Doug Collins.
Doug Collins.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
I mean, I think Collins had about 20% of the vote.
Yeah. Collins did fairly well. I mean, he was obviously in the House there, so just trying to jump chambers, which, and when we look at that, and it's one thing where, you can have whichever opinion, you can like both of them, you can hate both of them, you can like one and hate the other. From a party standpoint, that kind of creates a dangerous situation when you're going through this process, which, I mean, Loeffler and Collins, they both, I mean, that was a nasty campaign. Yeah. They were both taking stabs at each other. And so when you look at that, and then now we're turning the corner and trying to unify everybody, I mean, of course, that's the ideal of what we want to do, but it's hard to bring people together after you just spent millions of dollars trying to tear the other person down who's on your side. And
well, look, remember what happened in Alabama before, right?
Yeah.
It's somewhat similar to that. I mean, and this is what happens when you get a bunch of Republicans jumping in there and doing all this stuff, and then they wind up in these primaries and then on these crazy runoffs, and like, okay, there's no way left. We knew going in there was no way that anyone was going to win the majority in that particular race.
Yeah,
like 19 candidates. To me, that's just really insane when you're in a general election.
But one thing I do want to say that I want to bring Geoff in, actually, because I know Geoff's been a little quiet today. But my view is this, okay? There is a couple things, there was a nasty primary in Florida for governor. And in 2018, we had Ron DeSantis and Putman, who is the ag commissioner there, who lost. And I think they had a little help from the Democrats there to unifying the Republicans behind Ron DeSantis. I think we're having the same thing with the effects of, I forget the guy's name, the Democrat that's running against Loeffler. I think Republicans will unify behind Loeffler because the guy is a guy that praises Jeremiah Wright and and is basically, maybe even if it's possible, to the left of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Geoff, you want to make a comment? I have something else to say about what Dwight just said too, but go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit. I don't follow the news quite enough to get a good take on that, but I will say in general that they say a house divided can't stand. So I support having good strong candidates that everyone gets behind initially. That's why we have primaries, is because we want to try to whittle down the candidates to a reasonable number, and so that people can determine who the front runners are. It's not perfect. I mean, sometimes you'll have people that are good candidates that just get trimmed too early because of whatever reason. But that's just the way I think it's classically been, and it has kind of worked for us. The problem is that, and again, whether it makes sense or not, I mean, having Georgia saying, you got to have a majority of the votes, not just a plurality, is kind of like having, almost like a playoffs, where it's like you got the primaries and you have like these runoff, elections. And so you actually have basically two candidates, which, good or bad, I don't know. It's certainly interesting. But to your point, I mean, if you start attacking, your opponents that really are on the same team, it kind of whittles down the whole trust for the whole, your whole team. Because if you're, shooting darts at each other, you're going to end up with darts sticking out of you. When it comes time to support you, like nobody comes out unscathed in those kinds of endeavors.
Right. I mean, kind of think back about the previous presidential races for the Republicans, right? We have 23 candidates or 17 candidates. What happens during that time period? They're attacking each other. They're providing fodder for the Democrats or the other side. When the Democrats attacking each other, this past year provides fodder for the Republicans potentially to do that. And then people remember those things, right? I mean, you're going through this process, but people never really forget all of those things that are happening.
Yeah.
That becomes research. But go ahead, Nate.
Sorry. I think, to that, timing matters, though. And the difference is, we have a primary and then we go to a general, we move on, and we've got a few months in between. Right now, if you have to achieve that 50%, you're prolonging a process and you don't have the same time gap. It's, one day I was stabbing you in the back and the next day we're supposed to unify, which with our system, in our state where we have our, primary then general, we've got months in between there. So it's, yes, we still have the infight, yes, there's the figuring out who's best and then unifying behind the winner. But, it's different because timing matters. And I would say the big difference there is timing. And, when you think of news headlines too, I mean, timing matters there as well. A story that's a story 3 months ago, unless it's a really big thing, is not going to be a story today or tomorrow. And so I really think, just as time can heal all wounds, I think that's true for politics in some regards as well.
Yeah. So what I was going to say back to what Dwight was talking about before a little bit on Georgia was, I subscribe to the 538 Politics podcast. So, basically I know I'm listening to a bunch of liberal journalists. Okay. But that's okay. That's part of my job. And that's something that I want to be able, we have to be able to listen to the other side to get a better understanding of everything overall. We can't just be in an echo chamber all the time. Right. And it was interesting because the guest on this show this week they were talking about Georgia, and it was a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and he was pointing out in Georgia, with Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp and all these other things, Ossoff, Loeffler, Warnock, everything that's going on here, Purdue, is that what he observed in Georgia is that it has become much more of base elections. That when he looked at things, that they were seeing that the Kemp and Abrams, and the same thing happened with Trump even, and Biden. They weren't really looking at the swing voters. They just went for their base and tried to expand their base, and they just left the swing voters out there instead of trying to get them to switch or move over to their side. And Kemp won basically by getting that base out, and Abrams fell a little bit short, and so this is kind of an interesting thing there. But Georgia, that it's something that the Republicans better take a real hard look at and try to figure out what that strategy is going to be.
You can't let Georgia become the new Colorado
there, because it could be a one-off deal for Biden winning the state. But as I said before, it's like a lot of other areas where the urban areas expand, people move in for jobs and things like that. Those people tend to be Democrats, we have seen that in other parts of the country where Democrats leave their high tax states and they move somewhere else where the cost of living is better, and it starts to change the makeup of those areas. And so Georgia, even locally, those things are changing in those urban areas. Suburban areas are still out there, but one of the problems that this guy said that Trump had in Georgia was that he lost a lot of the white suburban women vote this time around that he had before. And, that race was 14,000, 15,000 votes.
Yeah.
It might've been enough. It was pretty darn close.
So let me piggyback off that a little bit, because my thing about this, I know there's really talking points here, but it kind of brought in mind the whole concept of like Social Security and welfare benefits, and how you get big cities like Atlanta, to kind of switch from going from blue to red. And again, I'm not saying this go down the whole political discourse, but typically Democrats will support more social programs to help people that can't work or choose not to work for whatever reason. Republicans are trying to help small business owners to develop companies and to facilitate small businesses to help them grow. So I mean, that seems to be that, in gross terms, the kind of differences. And my philosophy is, I'm kind of like Nate. I'm a fiscal conservative. I think generally growing businesses, creating businesses is a better model than just providing people with social benefits, which again some people just need. But beyond that, if you get people in these cities like Atlanta, which is changing its demographic makeup, and Republicans really push out the programs that we're going to help generate jobs here. We're going to help small business owners. We're going to help people, live the American dream. Saying we're going to help you, with a business and really get them on the path to being independent. I think that could, in a sense, revitalize both the city and get them to see that, really, Republicans aren't so bad. We're just about, trying to get people to enable themselves to be, the enablers of the American dream, as opposed to having other people help you to enable it for you, if that makes sense.
That's good. Nate, I want to ask you a question here too, because you were talking about the registration in Wicomico and the area down there and trying to, improve this. So that brought to mind when you were saying this, something that I wanted to ask someone like you, and, obviously Dwight and Geoff can chime in on this, is that in general, and I'm painting a very broad brush across the country, we see that, the voter registration over the last several years, the increase really isn't with so much, say, with the Republicans or the Democrats, but it tends to be with unaffiliated and independents. So is in your opinion, do you see that in your area, or just if you looked at it nationwide, do you think this is people who are getting fed up with the party, the D's and the R's, and they want to be somewhere in the middle, or they just don't want to be associated with a party? And how do you, as a Republican, how do you, as part of a party, mechanism there, I don't know what the registration is where you are for that independent unaffiliated, but for the Republicans, how does anybody, Republican or whatever, look at that and say, how do we figure out who these people are? How do we appeal to them? How do we get them on our side? How do we know who they are? That type of thing. How can you map out an election process if you're say you're 55 percent Republican and 42% Democrat, but you've got this other independent or some of whatever figures out there. If you've got say 10% or 15% unaffiliated or independent, how do you deal with that group? Do they even vote very much?
Sure, I think it's an issue on two fronts. Here on the shore, I'll say what we actually have a lot of is your conservative Democrat or your blue dog Democrat. And so these are people that actually, my friends, actually a lot of people who really agree with me on a lot of issues, but yet, the family grew up Democrat, just kind of a farmer. They vote and they don't follow, they don't vote along party lines. I'll put it that way. They vote for the candidate, not the party. And I appreciate that. However, I'd appreciate it a lot more if they would just switch the registration. That way it would help us build that momentum so we could show the number. And really, that's how we continue to elect Republican candidates as well down here, is we're reaching out to those conservative Democrats. And, down here on the Eastern Shore, the economy looks a lot different. And so, when you talk about a $15 minimum wage, that's something that would shut many of our small businesses down. So, when I spread that message here in Wicomico County, or even in Somerset, I've got a very good relationship with the chairman there. These issues, really these economic and many other issues as well, environmental as well, a lot of these issues, it's really just a common sense thing of, hey, if they did what they're talking about, it's going to put you out of business. It's going to change your way of life. You're not going to be able to keep farming that field that you've had in your family for 100 years. And so really they end up being quality of life issues. And it's just saying, we've got the answer. We've got what you're looking for in our party. And you're voting for our candidates. We just haven't, registration then becomes that issue. And so that's really what we're going to continue to tackle. But to your point about independence, I think that's where we need to do a better job as a party, really with engaging our youth. Because when you look at, who are those independents? Are they people who have been lifelong Democrats or lifelong Republicans switching to be independent? Some of them are. But it's also a great, our generation, our young people, my peers, looking at this system and saying, wow, we've got a mess, on both sides. We've got a lot of discord. We've got a lot of infighting, and it's just saying, some people who think their vote really doesn't matter. People who are voting in an election but thinking that the outcome has already been determined because, if you're on the shore, you think, I'm on the shore, it's going to be what it's going to be. If I was across the bridge, I'd be thinking, I'm in whatever, I'm in a blue county, it's going to be what it's going to be. And we need to get rid of that mentality. We need to spread the word that your vote truly does matter.
Just joined us. Dr. Rodriguez has just joined us. Would like to welcome to our show. Welcome, Dr. George Rodriguez. Go on, Nate.
Yeah, come on. Sorry,
Nate. It's that message of your vote does matter. And hey, let me talk to you a little bit about who we are and what we stand for. Because oftentimes you can watch the news, and of course, depending on what channel you're watching, we can get portrayed in a very negative light. And that's, we're not a monolith. We don't live in a silo. We're all individual people. We are a party who has certain values, and we do stand behind those values. We are the party of saving money, being responsible. But I think it really is just about engaging those voters who are those conservative Democrats, or even the swing Democrats, or your unaffiliated, engaging the young people as they're registering, that your vote actually does matter. And here, let me, what do you want to know about our party? Don't just believe what you're being told. And so really engaging individuals and encouraging them to think for themselves and to, be those critical and analytical thinkers that we all want to be and that we want to encourage others to be as well.
All right. So we've, as Dwight said, we've been joined by our newest doctor, Dr. Rodriguez from San Antonio, Texas area. Hey, George, good to see you again. I'm glad you could join us. I'm now going to shift the conversation to you just since you've joined us, because you're going to bring us from the great state of Texas. And I want to know what happened to that blue wave in Texas. Why didn't Texas go blue, George? I mean, the Democrats, I thought they had that in the bag.
Hey, Beto, was having Beto's had a big party.
Yeah, isn't Beto one of your best friends, George?
Yes, we do lunch all the time. No free lunch. I don't know, as far as the blue wave, let me tell you, it's been one miscalculation by these Democrats after another, mostly because they are getting funding from Hollywood and from New York City. And as everybody knows, Hollywood cowboys and New York City cowboys never, you can smell them a mile away. They're cologne. But they really miscalculated. First with Beto 2 years ago, trying to unseat Cruz, but then big time this time around because they poured in what, $50 million into Texas. And they lost seats in the Texas House. They lost seats in the Texas Senate. They lost seats in Congress. And it's quite evident that they played two cards very, very poorly. First of all, they played the ethnic card really, really poorly. Texas Hispanics are not, we call ourselves Tejanos, Texicans. We're a different breed from Californians. We're not Puerto Ricans. We're not Cubans. We have a very, very unique view of politics, which is usually very, very conservative. One of the big miscalculations, for example, that was made was there was a fundraiser, Democrat fundraiser for a candidate in Laredo, and they held it at a veterans of foreign war, VFW hall. The people that were in charge for the Democrats, and I say this with no prejudice, I just say it as a matter of fact, were lesbians. That went over very poorly with the macho Mexicans in that neighborhood, in that area. Very, very poorly. They just didn't, they couldn't relate. There was another situation where they held a rally for another candidate in Brownsville along the border, and they brought in a couple of pro-abortion people to speak. They were speaking at a Catholic church. Well, that went over like a lead balloon too. They have completely misunderstood the Hispanic vote. The Hispanic vote, or the Tex-Mex vote, specifically in Texas, went something like 60% for the Republicans, for Trump. That was number one. Number two is that they brought in so many folks from out of state to be consultants. In Austin, you would go to there were rallies for the Democrats, and the majority of the people that were there were either from California or New York, and it just didn't play. It just didn't play. So the blue wave, either they're going to have to accept the fact that they're going to have to run a more conservative race, thereby offending the left, or they're going to have to, or they're just going to have to give up, because this, embracing the left, the Black Lives Matter group in Dallas and in Houston really didn't play well. Really did not play well.
And George, I want to say the last Democrat governor of your great state, Ann Richards, would have a hard time. I mean, I know she's passed on to the great beyond, but Ann Richards, as a Democrat, couldn't get elected to dog catcher in the Democrat primary.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah,
they've
gone too far to the left. They've gone too far. She would be a Republican
today, as would Lloyd Benson, I believe, would be a Republican in Texas.
Well, the former governor. The former governor of Texas and the Treasury or Commerce Secretary, what was he? Governor Perry was a Democrat, and he left the Democratic Party to become a Republican. So it's not, it's happening all over the place. At the lower levels, lots of Democrats leaving the Democratic Party because it's become so far to the left. It just has gone too far to the left for people.
So George, before you joined us, one of the things I was trying to talk about in general was just like we were talking about Georgia and some of the demographics that are changing there. I mean, this is one of the reasons I thought that, the Democrats had been targeting Texas, is that they thought they had some inroads because they were figuring that, there were demographic changes happening in Texas with these outsiders moving in and starting to change the population, the makeup of the Democrat-Republican ratio and things like that. Did the Democrats totally miscalculate on that? And
they have. I mean, one of the things that they've been playing Texas are the number of Californians that have moved to Texas. I mean, and we have a lot. I mean, here on my own block, there are 3 families from California that have moved in. They miscalculated because they assumed.
Oh boy. I think the Democrats have got to his internet signal.
He was doing pretty well there too.
He's being jammed.
Is because they don't like the politics. They don't, so they
brought that jammed by the Democrats.
so again, they lost out in that one. I mean, it was another miscalculation. Again, the big problem that we see, guys, is that over and over again, both the media, the mainstream media, as well as the Democrat leadership, doesn't talk to folks on
his connections get wonky.
So they get a false narrative. They get a false understanding of what is going on. Miscalculating the Hispanic vote, miscalculating the California vote in Texas. I mean, that, so it's become
all right. So all right, let's go on to something else here. Something else I wanted to ask everybody about. So Nancy Pelosi.
That's the Civil War. By the way, they were calling.
The Democrats never cease to amaze me, and she comes out and she says that it was a great election for the Democrats, basically, because when you tally up all the votes the Democrats got in the House, their candidates, they had 75 million votes, which was more than Donald Trump got. I mean, and there were about 72 million thereabouts for that Republican House candidates. But there's, totally avoiding the fact that they lost seats in the House and she's barely hanging on.
They've got a 5-seat, they got a 5-7-seat majority right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's still races that haven't been called yet, but she's facing the slimmest majority in decades, maybe 5 or 6 decades.
World War II, actually.
when they finally do the tally, when they finally do the count. California was very good. We started getting back those seats, right, that we lost in 2018. And we had, Dwight, you love to talk about the year of the woman. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
George, I don't remember. Did we have women elected to the House or anything in Texas? Did you get some?
Yeah, we did. We've got two of them. Two new Republican women, very, very conservative.
And I know Nate's County elected a woman to the council in your city, right? Is it county council or city council?
County council, yeah.
County
she was appointed a little bit over a year ago, and Nicole Ackley, she ran her race and was able to retain her seat, and we retained as a county. We kept our majority, and so that was a
very important race.
Yeah,
that was it was our foremost priority, and so we're very proud of the victory that we were able to fight for and win, and of course the state party was a great partner in that as well.
Now where's this, Nate? Where are you at? Where are you located?
Wycomico County, the Eastern Shore.
Yeah.
So
I know the sheriff
very the area a long
well
time ago. When did you leave DC, George?
I left DC in 1993.
So you basically drive through Nate's town as you go to Ocean City.
Yeah, I know the sheriff in Wycomico County. I know the sheriff down there.
Great sheriff they've got over there.
He's been having some problems with illegal alien criminals.
So, on Nancy, I mean, what are the thoughts about Nancy, though? I mean, it's like, what is it with her that she has to put on this face about, trying to do this? I mean, who's buying the story? Is the media, I guess?
I think the media is. The media is. I mean, everybody is so concentrating on the defeat of Trump that they don't understand that the major defeat has been the number of governors that Republicans won, the number of House seats that Republicans won. They're really, they're ignoring that story.
And the fact that South Florida, we took out Donna Shalala. She's gone.
I think I'm about as happy as you are about that, Dwight.
I mean, let me tell you, the Florida Republican Party, if we gave out awards for the best state party of the year, the Florida GOP would get that award. They ran the tables there all the way from the Space Coast down to Boca. It's all Republican now. We ran the tables, and I mean, this is a testament to effective when the party gets involved and you coalesce behind the winners of the primaries, opposed to I hate to say it, Nate, in our state, we kind of have a little bit of that mentality of uniting behind the winner of the primary sometimes, where they go, oh, boo-hoo, my guy didn't win, so I'm going to stay home.
Yeah.
Go vote for the Democrats.
That is, that's true. But I mean, that is actually a huge problem for Republicans. It's just that they won't do that. When I think back to my state Senate race from 2010, I always chuckle about the fact
you almost won.
Well, no, I didn't almost win. We're talking about Montgomery County.
You got 31% of the vote in District 19. That is phenomenal. That's a win.
But that's about the average. You can put up almost any Republican up, and the thing about that race, which Alex Mooney had, when I talked to him about the race beforehand, was just that we had Roger Manno, we had Michael Lennon, and Lennon was the incumbent, right?
Yeah.
And Manno was the delegate, and challenging him, and Manno won. Well, the Democrats were upset. The Lennon supporters were so upset. I got emails from his supporters saying, who are, we're thinking maybe we ought to support you or whatnot. I'm thinking like, there is no way in heck, you guys are going to support a Republican. I figured that the best bet for me on that one was that they were going to be so pissed off that Manno even challenged Lynette and then won, is that they just wouldn't vote in that particular race, which will happen in a lot of cases. But, Republicans sometimes just don't do a real good job of unifying and getting behind the candidate when they need to.
I will say in 2014, we did rally around Larry Hogan relatively quickly, I think, but in years past, I know, I don't know, this might be before your time, but in 2010, when Bob Ehrlich had a primary, I think the Murphy people didn't quite rally around Governor Ehrlich as quickly as, say, we all rallied around Governor Hogan. And I mean, in disclosure, I was a Hogan guy back in 2011 when I had met up with Larry in 2011 over at the Hogan Companies to do a little interview for a project I was working on. And I asked him then, "Are you going to run for governor?" And he goes, "Oh, we'll see, Dwight." Every time I saw Larry Hogan, I go, "Are you running for governor?" He goes, "We'll see, we'll see." And he ran, and we won. And there was.
I will say that no matter, even though that the governor has probably lost a lot of conservative support over the years, from people that we know. I think back to that first campaign, and you have really a political, an unknown person, in that regard, running, except for his father, who had been well known and things like that. But you had this guy, and I thought he did a fantastic job in running because to me, from my perspective, he made himself a man of the people in the sense that he reached out to people. He was doing things, and one of the big memories I have of him was that when we were at the Silver Diner and he came over for one of the Mornings on the Mall radio program interviews, we were done and a bunch of us gathered in front of the bus and we were just taking some pictures in front of the Hogan bus. Yeah. And he was exiting the diner. And he saw us. There were about 4 or 5 of us there, and he goes, "Hold on!" And he comes, he kind of come ambling along, and he jumps in the middle of us, and he says, "Okay, we're ready." I mean, who does that?
Well, here's the Republicans
and a lot of other people who've been around Hogan over the years, is that he really, particularly with Central Committee members, he really tried to get to know everybody's name. So if you saw him anywhere else around, he would greet you, he would shake your hand and mention you by first. I don't know, that was unlike any politician I had known in my life.
I mean, Bob Ehrlich was a lot like that too. Bob,
Bob's a good guy, but I don't think Bob did not have the Hogan personality for that.
And another one is Governor Allen of Virginia. If you recall, the 2 Virginia governors we had at our Lincoln Day dinners, they took forever to get to the head table because they were.
And that's good, but I'm just saying in Maryland, for me to see that on the ground firsthand, that was something else to really see like that. And I mean, we mentioned Rick Perry earlier. So when Perry had thrown his hat in the ring to run for president, things like that, and I had been in Texas for other events, and he was speaking at some things. He even sponsored something that we went to some barbecue joint and all that stuff. He was extremely gracious. He was very friendly. He had pictures taken with really everybody. It wasn't just, "Hey, I'm here. I've paid for your barbecue dinner and thanks a lot. I'm going to go."
Yeah.
He hung around. He took pictures, and he was good. Those politicians, I think, can last a long time in a lot of ways of saying, "Hey, I want to kind of reach down a little bit. I don't want to look like I'm on some kind of pedestal per se," and that goes a long way in my book.
Yeah, and
so Don, can I respond to you as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I think you bring up a lot of good points. I don't know Governor Hogan personally, but every time I've heard him speak, he seems very magnanimous about people around him. But your point earlier that I want to touch back on, which you kind of circled around it, kind of a weird way, but you're asking about the independents and the other parties that what do we do with them? And as far as I'm concerned, the people that vote like Green Party or Tea Party or something are because they want to be heard about, this is an issue that matters to me. Whatever the issue is, this is something that's important to me for whatever reason. It may be that you are directly affected financially, or you have, skin in the game for that issue. It's a legitimate issue, maybe only representative of a small portion of your constituents, but it's still, a legitimate issue. I don't know if this is really practical or not, but, if there is someone in the Green Party that is really, focusing on, the disasters, environmental disasters in a certain region, or wants to really focus on a cleanup area that's affecting, community, get them in charge of a cleanup program, or get them on board. Say, hey, we understand that you guys, have these concerns. Let's bring this person on board. Let's get them to work for you guys. And likewise, I probably wouldn't be a very good politician because I don't have the right skin. Not color, just I don't have that thickness of skin.
You're very sensitive. Jeff's very sensitive. That's what he's trying to say.
But the thing is I would, if I was voting against a liberal and they were, neck and neck and stuff, I would find a way for them to get their voices heard in an area that I'm working on, because again, it's a legitimate constituents, percentage of the constituency, and if they feel like they can, work their grievances up through them and express them somehow, I mean, these are legitimate concerns. So I think that any politician who really is in the game for the people is going to listen to both sides. And so, from my standpoint, at least, if you can get both teams to play together, it's still competition, obviously, but it's not. It's like a friendly sport, not a just going to kill each other kind of thing.
Here's the thing, and that is one thing that not that I want to. Well, I enjoy beating up on her every opportunity, but Hillary Clinton, if you call her Chipotle trip when she ran for president in 2016. That just showed the stark contrast between the way she was doing things and how Bill Clinton would have done it. She goes into the Chipotle, she orders her whatever she ordered, and goes back to the Scooby van. Her and Mrs. Wiener, Huma Wiener, I forget what her maiden name is.
Huma.
Yeah, Huma Wiener, yeah. And they get back into the Scooby van. Well, Bill Clinton, I'm not a fan of Bill Clinton's. I think he probably I think he probably had Vince Foster murdered, but we're not going to go down that road. But,
oh no!
but my point is this:
that goes back to George's time.
he basically goes back. He was one hell of a politician. He would go into the room, and this is something and this is all successful politicians have this trait. He'd go in the room, he'd talk to you probably, he'd think you're his best friend. Bob Ehrlich can do it. George Allen does it. Jim Gilmore does it. Rick Perry's done it. You had, I'm not sure if you guys remember him at all. He was a Democrat governor from the Eastern Shore. Harry Hughes was a lot like that. William Donald Schaefer was like that, when he wasn't cranky, when he was a cranky old man, but William Donald Schaefer had the ability to connect with the everyman. And President Trump's another one. President Trump goes in the room, he'll talk to everyone there, and it's like you're his best friend. Everybody walks away and say, oh yeah, President Trump is my best friend, Unlike, you have people like, Joe Biden can't do that. Kamala Harris can't do that, and that's the uniqueness. That's what makes for a good politician. Like, Nate, and I'm going to pick on Nate a little bit. Nate's a great guy. I've met him for the first time. I talked to him about 2 minutes. I'm like, Nate's my best friend, and Nate will be governor one day of this state.
Well, I don't know. It's going to be hard to get another governor from the shore. I might need to move to Hartford County or something to do a little better in a primary. But
I don't know. I think let me tell you. I think we could have, because I know the late county executive in your county. He would have been a great candidate in 2022 for governor. I think I remember first time I met the guy, I go, you look like Nick. I go, from a distance, I thought you were Nick Kipke. And he thought that was hilarious. The funniest thing in the world. I know. He looked like Nick Kipke. But, I would never say never, because, I think if Larry Hogan were, say, from Wycomico or Worcester County, I think he still would have been elected, because Larry Hogan still would have been the same Larry Hogan, that same personality. I think if we had somebody with that similar type of personality from the shore that runs for, I tell you, he was a Democrat, lousy mayor, but heck of a nice guy. Fish Powell, the former mayor of Ocean City, he was actually the mayor for life until he died, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nate. He died in office, right?
Honestly, that was before I got into things. The only
See, Dwight, here again, you go to the young people who where the history is not, as much as they want to have it, it's not going to be there. You get
guys, I had I did a training session the other day for our county GOP precinct chairs, because we've got a bunch of them that are brand new. And one of the things that I compared the role of a precinct chair with an old political boss. Mm-hmm. Old political bosses were extremely effective. They are still extremely effective because they're populists. They know everybody on the block. They will, make sure that everybody's happy. They'll make sure that your dog is not run over, et cetera, et cetera. That's why they're effective in getting the vote out or buying the vote. Nobody says anything about it. Precinct chairs often don't do that. They're precinct chairs. Okay. And then what? And, if there's going to be an effective ground game, particularly in the urban communities, these precinct chairs have got to be out there, shaking hands, getting to know people, getting to know the issues that are really, really motivating folks and getting them to the polls, because, a political boss or a political captain will do it illegally. The politiqueras, here in town here in San Antonio, one of them was busted the other day by what's his name? She was busted for buying votes, and the precinct chairs have got to do. No, I mean, hey, it is so common in South Texas.
It's not like, let me tell you, they do it blatantly, and that's the problem. You have a little finesse with it. I mean, Alphonse D'Amato would tell you how you're not really buying the votes; you're just making them feel part of the family.
Exactly.
Got to do.
You just got to do it legally. You got to get them to the polls legally.
Yeah, and here's the thing: there is no law against you offering a ride for somebody to go vote. There is no law against you paying for somebody's Uber to go vote. There is no law against prohibiting you to help people go vote. Only thing you can't do is fill out their ballots for them. That's against the law.
Or give them money for it.
Yeah, exactly. Even though, by the way, I do know in 2000, you had a group that set up something called Nader Voter, where Democrats in solid blue Gore states would trade votes with Nader supporters in red states, so that way throws the election to Al Gore. And that was all swept under the rug. No, it was no story there. Nothing to see here. But that was a big deal in 2000. And a guy who I worked with at a .com, whose father-in-law, I think he was either former Attorney General of California or Lieutenant Governor of California. He's the one that was telling people about that. I'm like, he was such a crazy lefty, But it happens, and I think I think retail politics is what really works. I mean, Nate, your Lincoln Day dinner. I've been hearing so many great stories about your Lincoln Day dinner you did there. I mean, you made everybody feel welcome.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Dwight. We appreciated your sponsorship, or this show's sponsorship, Dr. Politics. But I know it's the one year you missed, and I wish you could have been there. It was a great time. It was, I'm a newer chairman. I've only been chair of our county since February, but I've been on our committee since 2016. And
you were the youngest Central Committee member in the state of Maryland.
Yeah. And 17 years old. Yep. And now I'm the ripe old age of 21. But it was our most successful fundraiser in our committee's history, and we're very proud of that. We truly have a great team here, and so. But to harken back to your earlier point for a moment, I don't know what's going to be in the cards for years down the line in the future, but I appreciate your confidence in me, Dwight. But I will say I might not be running for governor in 2022. But in 2020, I am running for second vice chair of the Maryland Republican Party. And so to anybody who remembers the Central Committee, I would certainly appreciate the opportunity to earn your vote. A lot of people say, I appreciate your vote. Please give me your vote. Well, I'm not asking anybody to give me anything, but I am saying, if you're going to give me anything, give me the opportunity to earn your vote and tell me how I can do that. And so I've been making those rounds and emails and phone calls, and looking forward to December.
It's called Venmo or Cash App.
But
I want to ask you guys, as we kind of get down to the end here, that we've had these interesting discussions, but what do the Republican Party need to do, in various areas? I mean, Dwight and I, we're in Montgomery County. I mean, George used to live out here, PG County because you lived in Hyattsville for a time and things like that. Areas where the Republican registration is very minimal.
Oh, by the way, Nate,
I'm sure there are areas in Texas where you also have very heavily Democrats.
Travis County.
What are the Republican, if you're outnumbered, 3-1 or more, what are the Republicans supposed to do to get through, to break through? Is it just always going to be Democrat, or will Republicans be able to make a breakthrough on some level?
Well, I've got a theory on that. One, Nate, I know you might think this is a myth, but there was a time, long time ago, Montgomery County had Republican state delegates, senators, and council folks. Our very first county executive was a Republican in Montgomery County, Jack Gleason. I think that's, or is that?
Gleason.
Yeah. But I think okay, here's the thing. Okay, the big picture. Maryland is 23 counties plus Baltimore City, plus Baltimore City. Baltimore County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, I hate to say it, we're kind of like the French resistance. We got to fight the Nazis. I'm not saying that all Democrats are Nazis, Baltimore Sun, Washington Post, but I'm using the French the French underground, the French resistance. We need to have candidates running against Democrats in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Baltimore City, parts of Howard County. In all honesty, it's an uphill battle for us to win in Montgomery County. We can win. You have to be there to be there for the opportunity to come up. You never know when your opponent may have a bimbo eruption, tax scandal. He's sending texts like the guy in North Carolina. You never know what could happen, and you have to be there. And, as they used to say, you don't win if you don't play. Was that the Maryland Lottery slogan? You can't.
That sounds like it.
You can't win. You don't win an election if you don't run. I mean, 2010, I ran, Don ran. I think you and I did actually the best of all the Republicans. I got 36% in District 15, and you got 32 or 31.
I don't remember anymore.
In District 19.
It's a distant memory. Nothing that I want to remember.
I still see that picture with the kids with the yard sign. That's a nice picture.
That was good. Yeah, I still have that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But my point is, things are changing. We got to think strategically as a party in the state. It is very important because where Nate lives, if there is any Democrat there, they should not be there, and we should have a Republican challenge him, just like Mary Beth Carosa, the latest Republican from the shore. There is no reason why we should have a Democrat elected to anything on the other side of the Bay Bridge or on the other side of Hagerstown, Maryland. Any Democrat should be, as Mean Dean Howard Dean said, if there is a Republican in a blue district, they're DOA, and that's how it should be with Democrats in red areas in Maryland. They don't share the values of your local constituency. I mean, the days of Democrats like Marvin Mandel, Harry Hughes, William Donald Schaefer are all gone. They're all now Paris Glendenning, Martin O'Malley, spend, tax, Democrats. They are not even Bill Clinton Democrats, for crying out loud. And if you're a Democrat and you're in a Republican area, switch parties, for crying out loud. They don't believe in what you believe in anyway. They think you're a kook and a hayseed, frankly.
George, I want to ask you, to Dwight's point too, because actually that's one of the key points, I think, for Republicans, is that even when your back is up against the wall in the sense that you're really outnumbered, when there's an election, find candidates to fill those holes and run. Do you, in Texas, from your observation, and even in a heavily Democrat area, do the Republicans, contest those elections?
Not like they should. However, I think that Donald Trump really showed how to do it. Trump came in, first of all, he's a populist, and he came in and shook hands and talked to people during his campaign for presidency. He came in 3 times to South Texas, talked about the border, which was outrageous for, the media was just outraged that he would talk to Mexican Americans about the border. Well, what the hell does we've been fighting against Mexican illegal immigration for generations, but nobody seemed to think that. So he comes in and he was a populist. Not only did he shake our hands, he came in and he listened and he spoke about the issues that we cared about. And we have too many Republicans that A, are afraid to run because they don't want to be called racist, or B, they're afraid to raise an issue because they don't want to be called racist. The fact of the matter is that we have lots and lots of ethnic minorities, Black, Latino, Hispanic, whatever you want to call them, who have become Americanized, and they believe in American issues. We believe in the issues of economic freedom, political freedom, and small government, low taxes. And those messages play great at the grassroots level. If candidates would just use them, if candidates were just not afraid to be called racist, to be called Nazis, to be called whatever. The media scares people to death. They scare people to death.
All right, Dwight, we're at the top of the hour.
Yeah,
so
we're at final thoughts now. So let's start with let's go in reverse order. George, final thoughts.
Oh, we've got to find a message. We've got to find encouragement for people to get out and vote and get involved.
Don, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I guess I'm assuming we're not doing a show next week. I don't know.
Actually, I think we can't because it's Friday night and because
Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, it's after Thanksgiving.
I'm okay with it.
That's fine with doing the show. Are you in town or are you going to Arizona?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
I'm staying in town, and that actually feeds into my comment. So, we're going to have, and unfortunately, there's going to be a COVID Thanksgiving, right? The CDC says don't travel. A lot of people are already afraid to travel. There's lockdowns going to place where I think the governor of New York said no more than 10 people, and Pennsylvania you're supposed to.
I believe he said don't be a turkey
inside the house if you have members that are not immediate members that are not living in that household. A lot of crazy stuff going on. I'm in a situation where I'm an empty nester. It's been years really since I've been able to gather any real family together to have a bigger Thanksgiving. We usually have had some friends in the past, but obviously that's not going to happen this year anyway. But hopefully everybody out there can have a good Thanksgiving nevertheless. They'll figure this out. We're Americans, we're resilient. We're going to get through this. We've been dealing with this thing almost all year long. We're going to be fine. Let's not let it get us down. Let's just have a great Thanksgiving next week and really be thankful for all that we do have. So that's my final thought.
Nate? You're on mute, Nate.
Uh-oh. There we go. I never know what to expect when we're with you, Dwight, but it's always a fun time. So thank you for the invitation. My final thought is just elections are important. Every election's important. If you voted in 2016, if you voted in 2020, there's no reason you should not be voting in 2022. And I think as a party, we need to stress that. I know we started off talking about Georgia, and I'll bring it back to Georgia. If you're not doing anything, or if you think the election's over, it may be over for us, but it's not over for Georgia. So go down there and make a difference there. Everybody can sit around and complain that things didn't go the way we wanted. But, a few people are actually going to be the ones to do something about it. So if you want to do something about it, go down to Georgia or send money to Georgia. Don't just sit and complain.
Geoff?
So, yeah, I was trying to think what could be a good closing thought. Certainly a lot of things have been talked about tonight. I think, for me, this has been a very interesting election for a lot of reasons. One being that I think this is one of the few elections where both parties lost in different ways, obviously. But I think because so many people voted, it shows that Americans are willing to put some skin in the game when it comes to these issues. Whether it's because Trump made it about him issue or whatever the reason is, having an issue that matters to you is important, because I think a lot of people feel like politics is just something that people play, and while it affects them, it's just like ultimately they can't make a difference. I think there's a disconnect between a lot of common people and the leaders, and I think that is kind of feeds into the message of like how to get people to believe in the Republican message is to tell people, yes, we care about your issues. These are things that we take into consideration. Like they were saying, if he wants to earn your vote, the candidates are there to represent their constituents, and by actually engaging with them, with learning their needs, with becoming part of the community, and really saying that, yes, I'm not just here as showing off, but that I really do care and want to represent your needs. I think that's how we get people to get involved. And I think that Republicans have a message for every person. It's not just for one class of people. I think everyone can benefit from Republican leadership, but how it's going to affect them may be different. Some people like Republicans because they're, conservative religiously. Some people like them because they're conservative financially or conservative, in terms of political or progressive issues. It's going to impact people differently, but you find out what matters to people, focus on that, and say, okay, here's your message. I understand what you're saying, and let's see how the party can help you with that. I still believe in small government, but I believe in giving everyone a slice of the American dream, which means helping people become independent, becoming their own business if they want to do that. And I think that's the Republican Party is the party to be in for that kind of dream. We just need to spread that message. We need to give people the hope that they can get out of this situation, get into something that they a dream that they envision, not what is given to them. Not saying this is what the government says you should do. This is what if you want to do it, let's find a way to get you to do that. So I think that there is a message for everyone. It's just getting that message to the people. So that's my thought.
I've got two final thoughts to shock everyone. My first final thought is I'm very irritated by Costco's policy changes. They used to have senior hours from 9 to 10. Now they've moved them to 8 to 9 without even telling anyone about it. The other day I went there during senior hours and I was shocked to see so many people that try to get in there when they're not seniors,
Yeah, wait a minute. Is that
like handicap parking?
Are you setting yourself up for that? You're the one who's been bragging that you've been going in there.
Well, I've got gray hair. I've got gray hair. I wear glasses.
You're not 60.
No, but I can pass for 60, I guess. But here's the thing.
Is that happening? By the way, Dwight, I just have to say, is that happening in Wheaton Plaza or something?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
because it's not in Gaithersburg.
That's the closest one to get to. Yeah, they're open at 9 now, and the senior hours are at 8.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's the Gatesburg one too, because if you look at senior hours, like on the Costco website, that's how I found out they started those at 8. So, which I do like that, but now, my gripe is Costco. Shame on you, really, shame on you. I was there, and there were lines at 9:30 in the morning at Costco's, and it's like, what do you people need to buy at Costco's? Why do you have to be there so much? I'm sorry. Why do you have to be there so much? But anyways, now
you have to be there so much.
I mean, I go there to get stuff like pistachios, and they got a 75-inch TV for $749, by the way, Samsung 4K. But never mind.
Are you saying only what you buy is important, what they buy is not?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Yes. I'm the one who wants to have a Dwight lane on the Beltway where only Dwight can drive in it. Not an HOV, not anything. I just want a Dwight lane.
Okay, so
you're that better driver.
I will say, Dwight, that you're right though. This is shocking. It says senior shopping hours are 9 to 10, except in Wheaton it's 8 to 9 Monday through Friday.
By the way, I get up early, like old people get up early. Like I'm up by 5 o'clock in the morning, so I'm fine with those 8 o'clock hours, But I've noticed. Okay, let me get to my second final thought. I can go on about Costco.
We're going down. I don't know where we're going.
But anyways, my second final thought is one. A couple things to remember. The election's not over yet, but here's the thing: we have a real Senate race in Georgia. If you've got time, make calls into Georgia. If you can go down, go to Atlanta, go to the suburbs. They got some great restaurants there as well. And go and canvass for Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler. And we need to, every vote matters. We need to, if you're living in Georgia and watching us, take a friend with you when you go vote, that's going to vote for Senator Perdue and Senator Loeffler. If the person's going to vote the other way, don't bother taking them. Okay, frankly,
lock them in their room.
Yeah, I mean, siphon the gas out of their car, whatever you want to do. Whatever. No, that'd be wrong. But Georgia is important. We save Georgia, we save America, because we don't want to have Chuck Schumer's America, which would mean the Green New Deal, DC statehood, Puerto Rico statehood. We would have taxes. like you wouldn't believe. They would get us on using, would be turning to California where we'd have to use only recyclable energies for, and California is now pretty much like a third world country where they got power on in the morning, in the evening, the power goes off because they can't seem to get enough, because they can only buy from carbon neutral sources, I believe is the California law goes. No wonder everyone's leaving California. And honestly, I think California is when you leave your voting habits with you in California too, quite frankly. Unless you're from Anaheim and then you vote right. So that's fine. But that's my final thoughts. And thank you, everyone. We kind of went into extra innings today. Thank you, everyone. And we will see you all here again next Friday after your Thanksgiving dinner. There's no college football. Are there any bowl games on Friday night?
Not yet.
No, yeah.
No bowl games yet.
So you just watch us.
For January now. I mean, it's just the schedule's messed up.
Yeah. So just watch us next Friday. We'll be back. Good night, everyone, and gobble gobble, as John McLaughlin would say.